A huge day today on the Ukraine war front, with Russia stating that it will scale down military activity around the Ukrainian capital Kyiv following meaningful talks in Istanbul, as Ukraine's negotiators have called for international guarantees for the country's security. That could be problematic. We'll talk about that. The Ukrainian negotiator David Arkhamia has said that there were now sufficient conditions for a direct meeting between the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Russia's President Vladimir Putin. This has been a Ukrainian demand. Russia said no so far. Ukraine wants an international mechanism of security guarantees where guarantor countries will act in a similar way to NATO's Article number 5, and even more firmly. In other words, what Ukraine says is that Russia needs to go back. They will be absolutely neutral, but if there is Russian aggression, then in that case and in that situation, they would have the assistance of other countries. Will Russia accept this? Well, Russia's Minister Alexander Fomin has said that the talks on the neutrality and non-nuclear status of Ukraine have moved into a practical field. Therefore, and I quote, a decision has been made to radically, by several times, reduce the military activity in the cities of Kyiv and Chernihiv. Now, Russia's chief negotiator Vladimir Medinsky has also said that the talks have been meaningful so far. In all of this, in just the last little while, there is a draft agreement which has been sent from Ukraine to Russia, right? That's now gone across from the Ukrainian presidential advisor. It goes up the system in Russia to Vladimir Putin. The Russian side has received the draft agreement. The draft agreement has details on the means to end the war. That's absolutely crucial. Russia can give us counter proposals, is what has been stated by the Ukrainians. There's an agreement on security guarantees that can be signed, but only after a ceasefire. So this is the key point the Ukrainians are making right now. Agreements, but only after a ceasefire, signing only after the withdrawal of soldiers to the February 23rd position. This is what Ukraine says. Now, there is apparently enough for Russia. Let's scroll up. Enough for Russia and Ukraine's presidents to meet is the point that Ukraine has actually been making thus far. Russia has not accepted that. In fact, the Russian foreign minister, just a couple of days, just yesterday in fact, had said that that meeting might be counterproductive, but in light of what's happened in Turkey, Istanbul, it might in fact be increasingly possible. Now, that said, one of the most significant developments in the war in Ukraine in the last 48 hours has been news of Ukrainian counterattacks, with Vladimir Zelensky's forces regaining a handful of strategically critical areas. Now, we'll show you these areas and just what it is that we are talking about. Now, in the map of Ukraine, let's first pull up several of the key areas, the key cities. And these are all cities, many of which are essentially under siege at this stage, but they continue to have Ukrainians fighting the Russians. This is the area where there has been progress. The cities of Kyiv and Chernihiv, these are the cities where the Russians have said that by a significant factor, they're going to be de-escalating over here from Kyiv and Chernihiv. That is extremely, extremely welcome news. Now, if that is to happen, then what is it that Russia is trying to secure in terms of its interests? And one would suggest that that has a lot to do with the Donbass region. The Donbass region over here, with the cities of Lugansk and Donetsk, is absolutely significant because, remember, separatist forces loyal to the Russians have controlled this area since 2014. A couple of weeks back, Vladimir Putin said that these, as far as Russia was concerned, was independent. And this has been Russia's core position, the maintenance of the Donbass region. Now, if that is what Russia is trying to secure, it might need to reinforce their soldiers in this area because, and we'll show that to you next in fact, this is, all the white areas over here are areas controlled by the Russians. The Russians are trying to move westwards along what is really a line of actual control in the Donbass region. The Ukrainians, though, have got a very robust defense. Let's bring up the next image, which shows where the Ukrainians are deployed. All of the areas in blue are areas where the Ukrainians have positioned their soldiers, and all of these areas in white are where the Russians are trying to push in this direction. So this area of Donbass if the Russians try and expand the territory of the Donbass region, they would try and overcome the bulk of the Ukrainian army, which is actually positioned in the Donbass area. So will there actually be a ceasefire which applies to this area as well? It's all very well and absolutely critical to talk about Kiev over here. But if Russia withdraws its soldiers, let's go back to the original page, if Russia withdraws its soldiers from the Kiev region to try and reinforce this area over here, then that could be the next major front line in terms of active fighting. One would hope that that doesn't take place. A final point over here, Ukraine has made very significant progress in Irpin, which is located near Kiev, and in an area south of Sumy in the last 24 to 48 hours, and in Kherson over here, which had seen a huge Russian presence. There is now an active Ukrainian presence as well, so it is disputed. And this entire country, till date, has contested airspace, that despite the fact that Ukraine's air force is very small compared to Russia, the fact that they've got several state-of-the-art defensive weapon systems, and we'll be talking about that in a moment, means that Russia has not been able to establish dominance of airspace over here. So let's talk, in fact, a little bit about one of the key systems which has been transferred to the Ukrainians. It's called the Starstreak. It's a surface-to-air missile system. They've got it from the United Kingdom. You can see it here on the screen. It flies at Mach 3, or 3 times the speed of sound. It is by and large thought to be spoof-free. In other words, jamming it or using countermeasures is difficult. It has 3 projectiles as opposed to a single warhead. These are made of tungsten. As it approaches its target, which would be a helicopter or an aircraft, this is a surface-to-air missile system, these 3 tungsten warheads actually engage and destroy that particular target. So that's what you actually have over here now with the Ukrainians, but they've got Stinger missile systems, they've got their legacy Russian surface-to-air missile systems as well, and much larger surface-to-air missile systems, which is why Russia has not been able to actually dominate the skies over Ukraine, and that's been a big problem for them. That's just one piece of technology, a lot more which we've discussed in the past.